If I'm buying a bit of kit that I'm going to use on my health and my fitness, and it is not cheap, but I can see why it's expensive, I'm happy to make that investment in me. Things like my sauna, my bikes, my Garmin, I'm not wearing it, my Garmin Fenix, those have a high price, but I see the value. Equally, when there is a bit of kit that I do regard as being crucial and I need, but I don't see it necessary to spend lots of money on it, I'm more than happy to make a saving. So when it came to sorting out airflow in here, a task taken care of by this little guy down here, I regarded the job of blowing as crucial, but not one that needed a lot of money throwing at it. So this is going to be interesting. A Wahoo Kickr Headwind fan, £200 worth, that I'm going to test today up against my little Vacmaster air mover that has been blowing me perfectly well for months and cost a fraction of what this does. This is going to have some tricks up its sleeve. But before we get onto that, it was not the only box Wahoo sent. A box of bits, so cool that even my kids were jealous. Wahoo just seem to know how to look after their customers. And if you're thinking, well, of course they're sending you bits and pieces because you're a world famous YouTuber. Straight face. I've read enough reports online on the Facebook groups to know that bar a very, very few exceptions, they just get it right 99% of the time when it comes to keeping their customers on board and happy. What have we got? What have we got? Wahoo water bottle, ×2. Socks, ×2. A Wahoo hat. I don't want to appear ungrateful, but I'm not convinced about the hat. Wahooligan. It looks huge. Extra large. Guys, I am a medium at best. It's a bit baggy. I won't take it personally. I know what you're thinking. Have they finally, after months and months of asking, hooked me up with the coffee mug I was after? It's better than that. Wahoo Element Rival, the Garmin Fenix competitor. People at Wahoo, thank you very much. That is going to be a very, very interesting one versus the other test because I am a gigantic Garmin fanboy. My Garmin Fenix X is probably my favourite piece of fitness kit. I absolutely love it. I've got the Garmin bike computer as well. I use Garmin on the phone for their app. I'm all in on Garmin, but I do like integration. I've got the Wahoo Kickr. Yeah, that's a video to come, but that is very, very cool. One last thing, someone stick the kettle on. It's coffee time at last. Okay, there are two aspects to airflow that I look for in here when I'm working out. One is the physical movement of air. How much air is hitting me, how fast, how targeted is it? And the other aspect is the clever stuff. Can I control the airflow? Can I adjust the speed on the fly? How noisy is the fan? So the plan is to test properly the current setup and then pitch it against the headwind and see sort of which is better. I say sort of because I'm almost convinced that the Kickr Headwind is going to be better because it costs so much more money. But because it costs so much more money, it's going to have to be an awful lot better to justify the price. Will it? Let's find out. So the Wahoo Headwind came out of the box, no assembly required, ready to go, plugged it in, found it on the app, the Wahoo app that I've already got on my phone for the Wahoo bike, attached it as a new sensor, they hooked up immediately, did a firmware update, and that was it, ready to go. In fact, it was so quick and easy, I had time to go and get a chocolate chip cookie that my kid had baked this evening and cover my other t-shirt in chocolate chips. Luckily, I had a spare one, didn't get any in my hair, otherwise I'd had to wear the silly hat. Right, let me explain the current setup that I've got in here. And first of all, the little fan that is up on the wall, that is not part of this test because it is a 10 quid fan off of Amazon that I love. Because it's only 10 quid. What's not to like? Comes with a little remote control that lets you adjust the 3 different speed levels. So whatever fan system I used for my main blowing, I'd always have that one anyway, just because it takes up no space and costs hardly anything. It's also quite nice in the summer in here when I'm working in here doing other things, if I want just a slightly more traditional type of fan just to move some air around. It also oscillates backwards and forwards like a regular fan does. So it's not part of the test because I'd have it anyway. Right. What is part of the test is the Vacmaster. The Vacmaster is a £60 fan, so it's not a cheap fan, but you could buy 3 of those and still have change versus the Kickr Headwind. The good things about it, it's small, it's compact, it doesn't take up much space. It's got a big handle on the back so you can hook it on the wall, which I've done to get it off the floor, which makes cleaning underneath it easier. It's not particularly loud, given how much air it shifts, although to be honest, in here in the garage, I'm not overly fussed about volume as long as I can hear Rocky 4 playing over the top of it. The downsides are that although it's got 3 different speed settings, you have to obviously manually adjust those. So I have to get off the bike. Well, in fact, I don't ever get off the bike. What I do is I decide how warm the garage feels and I pick a level of speed that I think is going to be most appropriate for that day's ride. So if it's really hot in here, I stick it on 3. If it's not too hot, I stick it on 1. You get the idea. Beyond that, I've got it hooked up to a smart plug so I can actually turn it on by asking Alexa to turn the cycle fan on. So I don't have it on when I start off, especially if it's cold in here. And as soon as I warm up, I tell Alexa to turn the fan on and off we go. It has a rather narrow wind range. Let me describe what I mean, because I've got my puffometer here, which measures wind speed. Both of these fans, the Kickr and the Vacmaster, are designed to not blow all over the place. So standing at the side of the bike, there should be almost no air whatsoever. They are very targeted in that way. The trouble with the Vacmaster is that the air is typically centered. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump on the bike so you can see where I fit and where I need the air, and then I'm going to test where the air is being blown, and you can see the downsides to it. So on level 1, if I sit up, I'm getting almost nothing. If my face is down because I'm crouched down on the bike like I would be riding most of the time, I'm getting 8 miles an hour. 0 down on my body. Level 2, 3 miles an hour up high in my face, 10 miles an hour. The fan is literally not moving the puffometer at all. 0 on my body, and obviously nothing down here. I mean, I can't even feel it down here. Level 3, up high, nearly 4 miles an hour in my face, 13 miles an hour in my body, half a mile, I mean 1 mile an hour maybe. I mean, really, I can't feel it down here at all. It's all here. So in a nutshell, it's shifting an awful lot of air very, very fast at my face. And the downside of that is that it feels very cooling. In fact, I did a ride a little while ago, the 4 Horsemen. It was a long 4 or 5 hour ride in here. And I had the fan on full blast because I was hot. And my face was being hit by the wind and felt fairly refreshed the whole way. And then as I was riding along, I looked down and the sweat was just running down my body, dripping off my shorts. I mean, literally the water was just flowing down from the saddle. My body was massively overheating and not shifting that moisture off through evaporation. My face was actually dry to the touch because it was in a strong 13 mile an hour wind blast. So it feels very good, but it's not actually very effective at covering the whole body. Let's switch over and try the Kickr. Now the Kickr is designed to point slightly upwards. It's actually got some little legs on the back that pop out that allow you to point it more horizontally. So if you're mounting it up high in front of you, rather than shooting up way over your head, it will come straight at you. I've actually angled it even more upwards because when I'm on this bike, I want the air higher than a normal person. I'm much taller than a normal person anyway, and I'm also on a rocker plate that puts me a good few inches above the deck as well. So I need it angled slightly higher, which is fine because actually what I would be doing with that fan is mounting it on a small shelf against the wall there anyway to have the ability to clean underneath it. So that will be something that I do in the future on a shelf, angled properly. For now it's just propped up facing the right way. Okay, we'll come on later to the ways in which you can control it. For now I'm just going to test 50%. Okay, up where my head would be if I was sat up, 3 miles an hour in my face, 5.5, 6, the same 5.5 miles an hour. In fact, I'm still getting 2 miles an hour down here by my legs. So a much greater range of airflow. Let's ramp it up to 100%. Not much difference. 4 miles an hour up by my face, or up by the top of my head. 9 miles an hour into my face. 7 miles an hour into my body. Still getting 3 miles an hour down here by my legs as well. Next step, ride the bike. Okay, 40 seconds till race time. There's a whole bunch of stuff I was going to run through about the fan, but I'm going to have to do it afterwards now, because in typical me style, I now have 29 seconds till it's go time. So while I am racing on that race, let me just go over the things I would have gone over had I got on the bike in plenty of time. And by the way, if you're wondering, am I riding a pink mountain bike? Yes. Now those results of the Wahoo versus the Vacmaster show a much more even distribution of air from the Wahoo, albeit at less peak velocity than achieved by the current setup. So a few things that occurred to me to clear up. If you're thinking those numbers, 8, 9, 10 miles an hour, they don't sound like much. I mean, in the real world, it's hardly flying along. That's what I thought, especially as the Wahoo is supposed to have a 30 mile an hour simulated effect. So I checked at the unit, and it is 30 mile an hour coming out of the unit, but by the time it hits me 5, 6 feet away, it's way more than halved. And that doesn't matter. You might be getting 20, 25, 30 miles an hour when you ride on the road, but I assure you, you don't want that from a fan. If I put the Wahoo 3 inches in front of my face, I'd get 30 miles an hour of wind and it would be uncomfortable. 13, 40 miles an hour is all you want before it becomes just unpleasant from a fan. The other thing I realise is that some people might just say, well, have the Vacmaster blow up my body instead of my face in terms of cooling efficiency. And that might actually be more effective. But the airflow range is so narrow that my head would now feel like it wasn't getting much air at all, and it would almost be the reverse effect of what happened in the long ride, where I thought I was okay because my head was cooled and I wasn't. Only this time I'd be okay, my body would be being cooled, but my head would feel like it was in an oven, and that's not ideal either. So as I went into this race, I thought there's probably no question that getting almost 10 miles an hour at my head and my body with still some airflow around my legs is probably going to feel an awful lot better than having just a blast in my face. And it's going to make the Wahoo feel like a much better option. But it would be a very reasonable argument to suggest that you could just get 2 Vacmasters, which would still be about half the price of the Wahoo, and get the same job done, have one at my face and one at my body. They take up more space, but they're hardly a big unit. It's not really a deal breaker. So the Wahoo does need to be doing something else to justify its price beyond more coverage, which could be achieved with just more fans. And the controllability could be it. There's 4 ways to adjust the fan speed. There's a button on the unit. I'm never going to go and touch the buttons. There's a simple slider on the iPhone app, and that's how I adjusted it in those tests. You just slide up and down depending on how much airflow you want. But going in and out of the app is not something I want to do either. There are then 2 automated settings which are clever. Option 1, speed. It's realistic, but I'd say it's not actually useful. Basically, the fan detects how fast you're cycling and then increases the speed of the fan accordingly, just as the wind would increase in speed in real life the faster you ride when you're outside. The problem is there are going to be times where I'm on Zwift rolling downhill, having a recovery, but going very fast and not needing maximum airflow. Equally, there'll be times where I'm going up a very steep gradient and do want lots of airflow. So realistic, yes. Ideal, no. Option 2, heart rate. My heart beats faster, the fan blows faster. In terms of setup, very, very simple. I just told the app I wanted the fan to use my heart rate mode, and that was it. I then put on my cheap, no-brand Bluetooth heart rate monitor, and the fan immediately detected I was wearing it, which I could tell because a little flashing blue LED turned solid on the unit, and that was it. Each time I now turn the fan on, it will look for the heart rate monitor, and as soon as it detects it, it will start working on that basis. Beautifully straightforward. Now let's pick up this ride and I'll tell you how it went. So I had already told the app what settings to use, and I may need to tweak these from time to time. Right now I've just told it turn the fan on at 130 beats a minute and be at max by 170 beats a minute. And the reason for that is that this garage, even in spring, is quite cold. I don't need the fan on until I'm up and running. In fact, in the winter I would need my heart rate over 130 before I need any sort of cooling in here. At the other end, My max heart rate is over 180, but at that point I would have needed maximum cooling for quite some time. So I figure 170 sounds about right. As summer progresses, I can jump back into the app and I can tweak those numbers to suit. So at this point, very early in the race, typical short 16k Zwift race, which means it's pretty hard from the start, my heart rate up to 150, 160 quite quickly. I have to say, the increasing of the fan relative to effort felt really natural. In fact, I don't actually recall the fan starting up because it would have been early on in the race when my heart rate triggered it, and I was focused on other things at that time. It wasn't until I sort of settled into a rhythm that I really paid attention to the airflow, and I realised that it was a much more useful airflow than what I'd been experiencing in the past. I could feel it in my face, as I have with the current setup, but not in quite such an intense way, in a better way actually, and more importantly, I could feel it on my chest, I could feel it around my waist, around the saddle, I could even feel it on my thighs. In fact, as I was pedalling and my knees were coming up into the airflow, I could feel them having the air rush past them, which is a significant improvement because normally from the chest down there's no airflow whatsoever, certainly not down by my legs. And I just kind of forgot about it and got on with the race, which is probably exactly what you're supposed to do. Now this is not a race review, but just in case you're interested, I did okay. I nearly got dropped on the second uphill section, heart rate definitely causing the fan to run at maximum by the time I got to the top. I then pulled it back, got up into that group again, and rode with the lead group towards the end, and then sprinting for the finish, suffered from two issues. One, after my break from cycling while the Wahoo bike got replaced, I'm still not back to full fitness, and the most obvious place that I noticed that is being able to maintain a high sprint output for 15, 20, 25 seconds. That sprint should have been way over 1,000 watts and it wasn't near it. And I was on a mountain bike. I was on a mountain bike because I did the Tour de Zwift recently, which was off-road, so I switched bikes and I forgot. Probably a lesson out there about preparation or something, who cares. Anyway, I got fourth, got upgraded to third on Zwift Power because the guy that won it was a sandbagger. I mean, it's all right, not too bad. Okay, bottom line, is that fan worth 200 quid? I wanted to say no. All through the tests, I've been thinking it is clearly a better item for the job, but it is not so much better that you should just go and drop £200 on one. I was thinking it should probably be 125, 150 tops. Now, there's a lot of things that I own where I've paid a price for them higher than what they should probably be, but I wanted them anyway, and my recommendation, it was going to be pretty much that. It's expensive, it's a bit more than it should be, but it's cycling, that's just how it is. But as I was cooling down after the race, what I normally do at that point, where I'm struggling to breathe, is try and tell Alexa, turn off the fan, because it's blasting me in the face still, and I don't need that. But I didn't need to here, because as I was very slowly recovering, the fan slowly wound down. And I quickly realised that is very, very cool. In fact, my race, where my heart rate was up to stupidly high levels very early on because of the type of race it was, and then they stayed there, that's probably a bad example, a bad demonstration of the fan's benefits. Because what I can't wait to use it for is things like interval sessions, where it will ramp up and then down the airflow dependent upon what you are doing, at which point it will just seamlessly and almost without you even noticing what it's doing, provide you with exactly what you need, which is pretty much perfect. So yes, it is recommended, assuming it's affordable. At the end of the day, it's a fan. Don't take out a loan for one. Don't sell one of your children unless they're a complete idiot. You will cope fine without it. But if you've got a spare £200 and you want something that is doing the job and doing the job really, really well, it looks very smart and then does some very, very cool stuff that probably falls under the category of, now I've had it, I couldn't be without it, even though you probably could be without it perfectly fine. It's got to be that fan. Okay, hope you found it useful. Big thanks to Wahoo again for all the bits and pieces, coffee mug especially. Apart from the hat, I mean, where is this thing? What were they thinking? If you've got any questions, stick them in the comments down below. I try and answer as many as I can. If you're not yet subscribed, please do so. Drop this a like, and I'll see you guys on the next one.